We certainly are. Me and Modern Lights, welcome back to another edition of New Sing, 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. We are live. It is the 31st of January, the very last day of the month. You got Juan on the side.
And Kyrin here on the other.
And today, musings, we're going to talk about longevity. Kyrin, straight away, why?
Longevity.
Why longevity?
Longevity, schmongevity.
Longevity, schmong.
So I came across this post on Reddit and thought this could be kind of fun because we have talked about longevity somewhat before. If you go back to a couple of the Meanderings episodes, I'm pretty sure I put in the thumbnail, like Juan going to live to like 180, things like that.
Yep.
I'd say we've talked about this at least
A few times.
I'd say at least 3 or 4 times independently. But this Reddit post was basically a post of someone who'd read like 10 or 11 books on longevity.
Sure.
And had just said like, who the author was and their recommendations. And
Please tell me Dave Asprey was in one of them. I didn't see this post. I didn't actually look at the post.
Oh, you didn't?
No, I didn't actually open it.
Okay, that's all right. I can bring it up.
I want it to be in the moment.
I can bring it up right now. That's totally fine. No, I can't because it's actually on Reddit. So I'd have to go find the post where I actually originally did this. It was up here somewhere. Here we go. So it was from the Peter Attia community on Reddit. After Outlive, I read 12 other longevity books so that you don't have to. Was the title of the post.
The premise.
So there was Aubrey de Grey, David Sinclair, Chris Verbiger. I don't know half of these names. Who was the one you were saying?
Dave Asprey.
Dave Asprey. Dave Asprey is not on here.
Okay.
Not on here. But I did a bit of research on Mr. Dave Asprey, and
cool.
so the key recommendations would be things like, one person would be saying resveratrol, blueberries, peanuts, NAD precursors, intermittent fasting, exercise, cold exposure. Another one would be like low calorie, low protein, low carb, high fat diet, plant-based diet with fish consumption, intermittent fasting, time restricted feeding, etc., etc. There's a whole bunch of them. You'll see it on your screen if you're checking in via podcasting app. But anyway, it was the whole topic came up, and I was like, okay, this is good because it's one of the ones where there's probably a bit of differences between us. I would describe myself as very skeptical on the whole longevity scene that there is, and I find it mostly BS, to be honest. Whereas you're the one you've read some books, you're very much more into the science. Are you a believer? Are you a believer, one in the longevity cause?
Yeah, this is interesting. Now, okay, I see where you're coming from. Now, first of all, I'd say yes. There's fucking science for this. You'd be insanely stupid if you actually think that you can't, for some reason,
live longer.
Longevity. You can. You want to prove it? Go smoke and smash yourself down with drinks.
Sure.
Guess what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Go have 4 boxes of Nurofen every day. See what happens. Right? Yep. It's not going to work. You can extend your life by conscious decisions.
Correct.
I think it's the bit that gets a little bit murky is that you can question or you can talk about is how much does something extend? Yes. What are you actually extending?
What are the exact things that are doing it?
Yeah. And more than anything, it's what are you outlasting apart from other things? AKA, are you dying? Longevity as in it's an accidental death, and that's why you die at some point. Or is it that you're outlasting your genetic predisposition to die from a heart attack versus cholesterol-induced problems, diabetes, or is it going to be something else mentally, right? It's kind of like you have a genetic predisposition that you're going to get something like this, and so you're outlasting that. So there's a lot of that. But what I thought we'd probably begin with from getting in, I think for people, because I think we can get broader than just a detail, which I thought might be even more interesting around longevity. Longevity, because I was looking it up, definition, just means long existence.
Okay.
That's all it means.
Yeah.
And I went, okay, well, there's definitely...
It's not immortality.
Yeah. And there is a difference between lifespan and health span. 2 different things. I think people need to get their minds around that. So
I've
of the stuff...
I've got a note on that.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that later. But got to start with our biases. Because when it comes to, I think, a conversation about longevity, you have to know where I think at least we come to what we're optimizing for or what we generally are focusing on, because otherwise it just makes no sense in terms of where we're missing each other or we're talking about something. So my question to you was, what would be your bias if you were to come at longevity? If let's just say longevity means here long existence, take it as you will with that. If you want a long existence, what's your bias of that? Do you care about it? Do you not? do you optimize for it or do you optimize for performance? The now versus the later.
Yeah. So yeah, there's two broad ways. So in this broad way that you're asking me now, I would say I'm probably just biased into kind of apathy. It's not something I really think about. I have no idea how long. Like I've never looked into my ancestry tree, for example, to find out how my family does and what sort of like things are likely to run in my family. I know just on my dad's side, they tend to live a little bit longer. On my mum's side, not as much. I don't have any grandparents alive anymore, so that's probably not a good thing. But I had slightly later in life, born slightly later. You know, my dad didn't have me when he was 18, so that sort of plays part into it. But nevertheless, I would come at it with like the bias is sort of like I'm kind of apathetic about it. I don't really think about how much better. How would my life be so much more successful if I died at 80 versus 100? Would I count those extra 20 years as like amazing?
Yep.
It's just too far off, so I don't really think about it that much. And hence why I'm probably a bit flippant about some of the things I was saying next, which is getting into like the longevity scene, I would call it. Which is that was more what I was talking about in terms of what I'm rather critical of. That scene, I've got a lot. I think rightful bias against it. There's
rightful bias.
I've written down.
That's the strongest of biases when you know you're right. The strongest of biases.
I've written down why the big criticisms and why I think they're valid criticisms. Yeah,
founded criticisms here. The right bias.
I do like that rightful bias.
Yeah, and look, my bias comes from I think for a long time. I read about it. I listened to it. Obviously, Peter Attia and a few others, Dave Asprey, etc. I've read lots of books about it. It's been interesting, but I haven't been doing any particular actions that really optimize for it, I guess. The bias now that is changing is, hey, I'm a dad. And so as a dad,
the Tony Robbins book, was that was kind of like...
Yep, Tony Robbins one as well, which was a big... It was like...
What was that called?
Life Force?
Yeah,
Life Force.
Like that, yeah.
And I think it was a mixture. It was a mixture of medical... I guess in general it'd be longevity.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few books that I've read around it. And now I guess the bias is, well, I'm a dad. There are some mental aspects of my thinking, which I think is just as a human, as an animal, you kind of go, well, I do want to be at a certain fitness level. I want to do things when my daughter is 20. Okay, well, that means that I'm going to be age 50. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, I want to be able to... And then if she decides to have kids, okay, well, I'm going to be this age. And I'm going to still be able to... So, you extrapolate from that and I go, okay, well, there's a certain anchor for me now to be a certain thing by a certain time. I think I've always had as well in my mind that, hey, I don't want to be some decrepit old man that everyone's going to be looking after. Fuck that. No. So, okay, what does that mean? What are the steps you need to take? But also from a longevity perspective, it's, all right, what do I do that? What am I supposed to be doing? But I will set a bias that I'm very still in the moment maximizing performance. So if you looked at half of the things I'm still doing, I'm still training heavy, hard, trying to do a lot of things. Is it the best thing for longevity in the quote unquote like perfect things you read? No, not at all. Some aspects of it, yes, is beneficial, but it's not optimizing for it. And so I'm not also at the full camp of I optimize everything for longevity. No way at all. And so sometimes when I say, hey, I want to live to 150, and we'll get into it now with the community, this is not by doing everything that this community says to do. It's what are the key big rooks in this chess game that you can actually use, as opposed to, battling away with tiny little mosquitoes that's going to do barely any percentage differences. So there's a little bit of that. The community, though. The community of longevity. Look, it is...
How would you describe them as a whole?
Well, I think fanatics. Fanatics as a whole.
That's a good word.
There's a couple of people, there's a couple of people that call, I can't remember, what was that guy's name again? There's like trying to get his cell age to be like really reversed and whatnot.
Bryan Johnson.
Brian. I was going to say Brian Simpson. No, Bryan Johnson.
Now there's a funny thing because there's two Bryan Johnsons. Did you know this? Oh,
really?
So there's Bryan Johnson, Bryan with an I, who you're thinking of. Then this is the guy is, the headlines are like spent millions to, reverse his age, wants to be 18, biological age, spends like 2 million a year, that sort of thing.
Yep.
And then there's Bryan with a Y, also affectionately known as the Liver King.
Oh,
The Liver King,
is that what his name is?
His name is Bryan Johnson. And I don't know how much longevity stuff he talked about, but he was certainly in like the health realm. And so ancestral living, all that sort of shit. So there's 2 Bryan Johnsons out there.
Okay. I'm not talking about the Liver King.
Yeah,
I'm talking about Bryan Johnson extending life. So there's people like that. Dave Asprey, obviously Tony Robbins. There's quite a few people who talk in the space. And when they get into those topics, they at least can communicate the idea to what I would assume is a fanatic base. There's going to be a couple of people who really they go, fuck yeah, that's why don't eat seeds, don't eat nuts, don't eat meat, don't eat plants, and whatever. And I think it can be a little bit over the top without a full picture of what does it look like in not neutrality, but what does it look like in balance. And there was in fact I wish I had remembered exactly where I heard it. I think it was in the Peter Attia, one of the conversations in Peter Attia. I think it was just a solo episode. But wherever the case may be, it was someone went out to a tribe in South America somewhere. And they were wanting to study them because they seemed to be living quite healthily. And the main killer of most humans on Earth generally tends to be, apart from accidents, is heart problems, right? Cardiovascular issues. And this particular tribe, for whatever reason, just weren't getting any issues. And I think they measured that by, I think it was most of the elders who were in the 70s. They basically did a test to check how much blockage and whatnot was in the arteries. And they came back at roughly, they looked like they were 50-year-olds in that relation. And, right, okay, maybe that relates to longevity in the sense that these people are living longer. They're not dying because of this particular disease or this issue. And it's one of those big ones. What are they doing? Are they, having NADs? Are they having the cold therapy? Is it seaweed? In general, basically what I got from this conversation was, no, all they do is just eat plain, boring food all the time, repetitively, and that's it. What they were saying about this tribe is, why do people die? Accidents. That's it. They just die of accidents. But they don't die generally from other diseases. And I think they were saying, how do they eat? It's unsalted, unpeppered, vegetables, meat, fish, without any flavoring. And the guy was saying, hey, I followed the meal with them, and when I was home, and he was like, well, yeah, it was really boring. It was really boring, but the type of food that he was eating, just the volume of it, kept him full. He didn't eat as much, so it was a little bit less calories, so he lost a bit of weight. But it was just simple. It was just, hey, had some carbs, had some protein, had some fats, the general good mix of nutrients and whatnot. Kept it simple. No, preservatives. No, nothing that was more than one ingredient. I think as they kind of called it, and they kind of lived really fast. So, you can talk about that and go, well, okay, that makes sense. But I feel like the community the longevity community can get so fanatical about so many things.
Yeah, they're generally pretty scientific based. Even if they're not scientists or dietitians themselves, they'll feel pretty comfortable
spouting something. Yep.
Throwing out studies, doing studies themselves. They'll become like amateur scientists, maybe is the way to put it. I was reading Aubrey de Grey's Wikipedia page, and I think it described him as an amateur mathematician, and like he's actually good. He's pretty good at it. I'm an
physicist.
yeah, okay. But, well, he actually, like, helped solve some problem, which was, like, a long-standing problem or something, or contributed to it. So, like, yeah, once you, like, start doing a little bit on black holes or something, then I'll take that a bit more.
I'm a starter physicist.
But, yeah, my main criticism, and I should just note, I got the Y and the I wrong with the two Bryans. So, Bryan, Bryan with a Y is the guy who's doing all the anti-aging, rejuvenation, that sort of thing. So yeah, I wrote down the people. I dare you to listen to the Dave Asprey and Bryan Johnson conversation that was on YouTube. It's called Reversing Age, The Quest for Immortality with Bryan Johnson, 1115 with Dave Asprey, published 1 month ago. So that was in that would be like December 2023.
I'm assuming, I don't think I've listened to it, but let me assume that they get really technical really quick, and they get pretty fanatical about little things.
No, I wouldn't describe it like that.
Okay.
I would describe it, so just for those who want to know, some of the chapters are here. Biohacking the brain. Are your critics making you old? What makes Bryan tick? The longevity, loneliness connection. Expanded consciousness with psychedelics. Olive oil versus saturated fats. Talking testosterone. It wasn't as technical as I thought. They would talk about like, oh, are you on peptide C3, blah, 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 blah? And he'd be like, oh, yeah, of course, duh. But in general, I would describe it as very similar to the train wreck that was the Lex Friedman Jocko podcast.
Okay.
That level of just awkwardness.
Yeah. Sam Harris and his wife.
Yes. Yep. That was this one, man.
Okay.
It was pretty rough because Dave Asprey spouts his mouth a bit, says some ask point blank so what do you think about your autism or like, you know, just really like blunt, because he himself has Asperger's. So it's like kind of like two semi-robots talking to each other. It's a bit weird, but that was kind of what I got from like the people just in general. Yeah, they're self-admitted weird. You know, there's nothing wrong with Asperger's or autism per se, but I guess like, does this the trendy word nowadays is neurodivergent. So different ways of thinking, viewing the world. And to be fair, I did listen to a bit of Rich Roll with Bryan Johnson, and he came across as a much more normal guy than in that one. So it's like,
yeah, well, I think the interviewer there is a very different.
Weird amplifies weird, that sort of thing. But then I'm like, okay, just because you have a different way of thinking, it doesn't necessarily mean you're right. And that was kind of like, they're almost using the different ways of thinking, like, I think differently, blah, 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 as implying that they're right in some ways. Like, does going on different paths lead to the better destination, you know, in a way? And so the people just in general that I've kind of seen in this longevity scene, they're a bit sneaky with their words, and they'll once again on here in this in that interview, what made it so weird was they talked about why it was weird, and they both had really successful companies, Bulletproof Coffee with Dave Asprey and Bulletproof whatever, that was his brand, and then Bryan Johnson had a medical I think it was related. He sold stuff to PayPal and had like something to do with the brain as well, company with that. You know, millions, if not tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions in these companies, very successful. They had media training, and they talked about this media training where the point of being in like a media press conference or something like that is not to answer the questions of the journalists or the people that are there. It's to present what you want to present. And so they had this thing where it's like, yes, and so politicians do this all the time, where it'll be like, yes, and then they'll just talk about whatever the hell they wanted to talk about, not answer the question. That kind of, the very fact that they brought up like this media training and that was how this conversation was kind of dancing around. Yeah. Like Dave Asprey would something, and then Bryan would kind of like dance around and answer this different sort of thing. Just the fact that they can do that implies that they think about their words, and they use their words in certain ways where it can kind of be tricky. And then you can get to like the outright lying sort of stuff, you know, Liver King type of behavior. And so once again, just like questionable with their adjacent sources. You know, using Liver King as a source probably isn't the greatest guy to like use as a source for things. Shamanism, ancient records. Dave Asprey talked about these. I'm just like, the fact that you're bringing this up makes me question a lot of the science that you do. And I'll get onto the science in a little bit, but okay. I'll let you speak for a bit. But yeah, geez, just the people just on the offset give me like, I got to be careful listening to these people, because I think I'm getting some snake oil salesman vibes, because they, you know, what else happens? They tend to sell
the supplement, or
the book, the advice, the program.
Of course. They've got to,
So,
if you find them
when there's some-
monetizing that particular thing,
When there's some financial incentives, there's some other things start happening there. So
yeah, there's something. See, I think I take the point from any longevity conversation is that there is remove the lying and remove the idiots who don't even like understand what the hell's going on and just not like doing it maliciously. Remove that.
Yep.
Then you're left with all these people who look. Some of them are scientists, some of them are not. A lot of them are smart, or they know how to speak, whatever, wherever you find them. The problem is, you can be clinically right, like you can be correct, you can be really precise about something.
Yeah, you can be correct about the data for sure.
But even in amongst the data, what I think a lot of the longevity, or in other conversations, probably applies in other conversations, but I guess I see it a lot in longevity is it misses the complex behavior of the system that other things play a part. I'll give you an example. So it is more around health related. Mm-hmm. There's not Peter Diamandis, the guy who does lots of carnivore.
I don't know.
And it doesn't even matter. I don't know. Saladino, I think his name is. Yeah, last name Saladino.
Okay.
So he puts this big thing about, hey, broccoli, bad for you. bad for you because all of these things. Now, he's promoting meat, carnivore eating, whatever you may think about that. But he's just like, look at the broccoli. Now, he did have people commenting on his video and reel and messaging about it, saying, hey, this really helped me out because I stopped eating broccoli and it helped me out with this. And the guy pointed out, hey, look at this article. That's why it says. Now, Lane Norton. Do you know who Lane Norton is?
He's a comedian, right?
No. Lane Norton, he was a really strong powerlifter. He was all the way back in bodybuilding.com. He was a big, strong powerlifter, doctor, and for a long time, he would just put out really technical details. He'd go on conversations and technically talk about training and powerlifting and food and the like. But he always stayed in that realm. Now, for the last years, if you want to see some laughed, this dude now has changed his social media presence. What he does now is he just goes around finding all these shit talkers and fucking them up, like just destroying them. And everybody hates him now. Everybody hates. If you go to the comments, everyone's like, oh, Lane, why are you doing? Like, it's people who are fans of the other people, the fanatical people, coming over and be like, oh, why do you say it like this? You're so hurtful. Why are you not trying to improve? And Lane's call out is, I did that for so many years. Nobody listened to me. I'm going to wreck you all now, and I don't care.
Yeah, and so I guess he'd be going after kind of like bro science as well.
Some bro science for sure. Like, it gets heavy on those people. But this particular guy who he was a double board certified doctor, right? Mm-hmm. This particular guy. And Lane both went like, what the hell, double boards? He like looked them up and he was like, this dude's psychiatry board. Like, what are you talking about? But then, he kind of points out, and again, this is just about data. He goes, well, you're pointing out this fucking thing about broccoli because this thing has been shown to do because it's like a compound. And Lane was like, well, that's also found in meat. And so why didn't you call out the same issue with meat? But it's because in a complex system, that doesn't operate that way. Now, it's weird because then you can find the exceptions of people who it does help out. But, the generality, mere mortals don't live with the exceptions. They sit in the average. So just because it's like, well, broccoli's bad for you, meat's good for you, or the opposite, is a little bit like, well, maybe you kind of have to figure it out yourself. And I think the fanatical, the detailed, the precision, the clinicality, it's true, but it also depends on yourself. And so that I think gets missed really hard in a lot of those sales pitches or information that gets shared out there for sure. Like we could talk about right now how the system of energy from ATP getting broken down into tridust phosphate, diphosphate to a singular, and then you have the adenosine and all of this and how it works. But yours and mine is slightly different in terms of energy output and all that. It just is like, it's just you're an individual. Now, the chemical process is the same, but in its individuality, it's different. So you might react differently in some ways to energy or caffeine input or the way that it binds to adenosine. You're not going to get that from Dave Asprey telling you like, well, if you just stop drinking coffee at 6 p.m., then that's going to, increase it by 0.32% of a fuck up. No, like, how do you know that? That's like an average number of whatever study was done on these fucking people. Yeah. That doesn't apply to everybody.
Yeah.
So I think there's you got to be like, no, let's be real. There's some clinical data and then there's the application of it to a general population and some individuals.
Yeah.
So there's differences. Differences.
I did some homework, people. So I've got a quote for you here from Peter Attia in his book Outlive. And he says, I really should have got Cole to record this. But does that mean a Mediterranean diet is right for everyone, or that extra virgin oil is the healthiest type of fat? Possibly, but not necessarily. To me, perhaps the most vexing issue with diet and nutrition studies is the degree of variation between individuals that is found, but often obscured. So getting on to Juan's point here. This is especially true in studies looking mostly or entirely at weight loss as an endpoint. The published studies report average results that are almost always underwhelming, subjects losing a few pounds on average. In reality, some individuals may have lost quite a bit of weight on the diet, while others lost none or even gained weight. So once again, that's just talking about weight, but exactly to your point, which is when there's so much complexity in the whole, focusing on the average or this tiny little subset, it's okay, but it reminds me of that parable where it's like there's three blind men and they're each touching an elephant, and one's like touching the tail, and he's like, oh, this must be a long thin animal. One's touching like the leg, and he's like, this is like an animal, or this is a tree trunk or something like that. And then another's touching an ear or touching the trunk, and they're all coming up with like different things, and like they're correct in what they're finding, what they're experiencing, what the data says, that data point, and the most real data point, your own consciousness and your feeling. But they're incorrect about what the thing is that they're touching. Yeah. They're just they can't see the big whole. And that's kind of how I look at these. Statistics can be used up on made up numbers. So if you're fucking making up numbers, and there's one that I brought up at that time in the Meanderings episode a while ago, where you were bringing up there's like biological age, and then there was another age. Do you remember what that was called?
No, I can't remember. I was actually looking up for this particular. I was like, there was, I can't remember. I can remember it's chronological age and biological age.
Yeah, there we go. And so chronological age is, I was born in 1992, so therefore I'm 31. Well, about to be 32 soon. And yeah, dang. And then there's
a couple of weeks.
Yeah, a month. Yeah. And then there is the biological age, which is what I think is a fucking made up number of some bullshit where it's like, oh, because of these particular markers that we chose, and that are, you see these in chronological people of X age, and because I show them now, therefore biologically I am also X age. And it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, here's another example. Sometimes if you got measured, if your blood pressure got measured when you were training, like just training, like a hard workout, they would be like, holy shit, this person needs to get, have to go to hospital or something like that. But you're training, like you're doing something about it.
It's
so
expected.
It also depends on like at what setting you're doing some of these measurements. Because you're right, with the biological age checks, yes, they do some checks. But again, what if you're just genetically different? It's like, what? All of a sudden now makes me biologically older for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, something. One side street thing, which I do love about what Peter Attia and Andrew Huberman are doing. Now, it's even too detailed for me, and I'm not going to spend the energy to listen to it too much, because I just don't get this and the deep weeds into it. However, if you care about longevity and you routinely look into journal articles and you want to verify it, Peter and Andrew do, I don't know how often they're doing it, maybe once a month or something like that. They do a journal review podcast.
Okay.
Where
oh my god, they must nerd out.
Dude, I listened to an hour and I was like, I can't do it anymore. I just can't. You have to watch it though. I think you have to watch it because they do it in video as well. Peter does.
Okay.
And they get to pick one journal article each, I believe, that they bring to the table for the conversation, and they go really fine tooth comb through it and show and talk through like, hey, you can see here with the data and the histogram plots. Generally you want to see this in this sort of data. That gives you an idea that the test was done correctly and that's the right variation. If you don't see that, that's proof of issues or something like that. So I was like, for those who want to learn how to really read journal articles as well.
That's kind of interesting. Yeah.
It was kind of interesting for a while. Then they just get so technical.
Yeah.
Even for me, I'm like, I'm not going to recall this. I'm not going to use it realistically. Yeah. It's fine.
Am I going to do this on individual, journal articles?
Exactly.
Unlikely.
Exactly.
So just on the last point, which was that the Reddit post where the guy was comparing different things. I think it was kind of interesting in that some people in there were saying it was like really contradictory, in that all these different books were recommending different things. I didn't find it that contradictory. I thought generally they kind of went along the consensus, which is what the most interesting thing was. At least, like, I'm just relying on what this dude picked out. I haven't read these 10, 12 books. So, take this with a grain of salt. He just wrote key recommendations and then put a list down. And if you're going as broad as saying, he went specific in saying, like, they recommended having this particular thing, resveratrol or whatever it is. But then on the diet side of things, they kind of went broad. It'd be like, some of them are just like...
do eat meat, don't eat meat. Do have lots of veggies, don't have fruits, have seeds, don't have seeds.
Yeah. What I took from that was it masks probably like the true things to expand lifespan, which maybe they talk about in the book. I sure hope they would, which are the general things that we all know we should do. Sleep well.
They do generally talk about it in some of those books,
but sure. And this guy might just not have put it in the key recommendations because it's so plain and obvious, or it's like peppered throughout the book where it's like it's like the obvious thing that people don't do.
Well, I'll tell you what. After the Boostagram Lounge, I'm going to give you the mere mortals how to live longer, longevity, existence going to be extended.
Let me do my last little criticism of the of the
group,
and this is the hubris. The hubris of these people. I just don't get how you can seriously claim to expect to live to 180. And I'm pretty sure they're genuine when they say that.
Oh, I reckon they are genuine.
So like they're claiming, yes, I'm going to live to 180. The like longest is what, 130 maybe, that someone's provably been lived to. So you're talking about extra 50 years on that. We've added maybe 20 years over the last couple of hundred years, discounting like child mortality and things like that. So, if you'd live to like age 20 in the, I got some graphs here, so I should probably bring it up. If you live to like age 20 in the, let's take here 1850, you'd expect to be 60.3. And nowadays, if you get to age 20, you expect to live to like, 82, something like that. So we've added 20 years maybe. You expect to fucking add 50 years on top of that. And I just don't see how you can claim that.
I would say you can. And I would say you could probably do it so easily. You could probably do it easily.
How?
I'm going to say.
How?
The concept, though, that I would want to explore about longevity is, what does it mean to be a human at that point?
Yeah, okay. If we're talking about that, merging with the machines, your consciousness in a machine, okay. I don't think that's what they're talking about.
I don't think it's what they're talking about either, but I think that's where, if you're being genuine about that, then I think that's what it actually entails.
We'll talk about that a bit more. A couple of other things. Here's a couple of quotes from that. I want to evolve with super intelligence into the next evolution of human.
I've heard that a couple of times from some of it,
we're on the cusp of the most extraordinary existence in the galaxy.
Fuck.
In the fucking galaxy, man. And there's just, those are just two random things that I got from that interview, and I'm like, Bryan, come on, man, how can you fucking say that? Like,
galaxy, dude, galaxy.
So there's the hubris as well as high.
Yeah,
that's they have this because like I mentioned, one of their things was the criticisms actually reducing your longevity, because it's people like me hating on them, and then it's like, you're hating on me, this is taking my energy away. So that's that sort of thing. And like, how do you counteract that? Dave Asprey's was, I'm going to live longer than you, so you're going to die. And so it kind of like makes him feel good, because it's like, oh, look at this hater, they're just going to die before me, lol. And then Bryan was, he was like, it's the algorithm. There's just humans are like designed to be like shit stirring, misconstrue things, and when you talk about longevity, like, you're going to get this response. So I just found it kind of interesting.
Wow.
They're two techniques for dealing with criticism, some of which, to be fair to them, is bullshit, because people like to jump into things, and I'm guilty of this. You know, Bryan Johnson's the one who he did a plasma swap with his son, and then he plasma swapped with his dad, and so it was like, you know, of course the headlines are like, man like steals youth from his son sort of deal, and it's like, okay, yeah, he was probably doing something a little bit different. That's not like, he wasn't trying to be a vampire. Like, let's be real. So some of the criticism is bullshit, and it's just media being media. True. But then, you know, come on, some of it's kind of valid.
Yeah, well, it's got to be. Look, yeah.
Anyway, yeah, we'll leave it at there. Don't need to continue on that. Let's do the Boostagram Lounge.
They're an interesting group, folks. They're an interesting group.
All right, so while you're doing that, I'm going to explain. The Boostagram Lounge, for those who are wondering, is where we shout out everyone who's helped to support the podcast monetarily this week, because we do have a lot of costs involved with the lights, with hosting, our time. It's nice to be compensated as well. We do not do any advertising nor sponsorships, despite Juan's joking around. It was either this episode or the previous one. And so we rely solely on your support to keep us going. The best way that you can do this is by sending in a Boostagram, which is if you go into a modern podcasting app. So this will be things like Cast-O-Matic. This will be things like Podcast Guru. I just did a tutorial on them. So if you really want to look at that, you can. There's info out there. I don't want to hear that. Oh, it's too hard.
There's means to get the information.
Fountain is really good. Probably my favorite of the bunch. Podverse a decent shout out as well. And yeah, Juan will read them off while I check out the PayPal.
Beautiful. Can you imagine if something in the paper, man? You're gonna jump off your seat. All right, we got one from Macintosh. Been a bit. Sorry, it's me, not you at all for sure. Great episode. Here's to a great 2024. 10,000 sats and using Fountain.
Very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, totally understand, man. I've been busy as well. I only just got to tune into his show recently, so yeah.
Thank you very much, and yes, to a great 2024. We got Cole McCormick, Row of Ducks, 2,222 sats sent using Fountain. I've had the same 4 passwords since the 7th grade. Is that bad? Yes, Cole.
I see.
Although maybe it isn't now. Maybe because it's like so long ago.
Yeah, people are like, man,
surely,
he's not using this.
Probably like a password of like your dog that's died now, and 3 people you knew, and it's like, man, champion to you for remembering it.
One of the guys in Fountain, just a random person, commented is like, I'll let you know. Just give them to me, and I'll let you know if they're good or not.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cole. Another one from Macintosh. Good discussion. Row of Ducks, 2,222 sats using Fountain. Once again, thank you, Macintosh.
Thank you.
Brian D. O'Leary. Good to hear Nick's story. That's 1,000 sats using Fountain.
Thank you, Brian. Much appreciated.
And then Cole McCormick. Another one appears. Awesome talk. Nick is cool. I've been obsessed with Fountain since the beginning. Enjoyed hearing his experience with alcohol. I recently dropped smoking weed, so there's a new vibe of sobriety everywhere I see. Fountain rules!
Brilliant. Thank you.
That's 5,492 sats and using Fountain.
Yes. Yeah. That was a fun one. It was great chatting with Nick as well. So I recorded that about a week prior to that, week and a half. Okay. And it was fun. It's kind of like, it's like, damn, I should have talked to this guy earlier. Like, Nick's cool. And I had a chat with him, like a year earlier, but that was just like a random call that we had. But yeah, I've been a lot more vocal in trying to help them out with some of the features in Fountain as well, improve that. Yep. And just on the podcasting news side of things, I briefly mentioned it last time, but Apple is now supporting transcripts. So Apple is technically now a podcasting 2.0 app. So now you can say
we're on our way.
47% of all downloads come from podcasting 2.0 apps, something like that. So it was really great, because the week before, some people were kind of like talking down on podcasting 2.0. It's like only 1% of listeners use these apps. Like, why would I tell my audience to do it? And then it's like, oh yeah, well now it's like 47%. So here comes the big news, Juan. We have gotten a PayPal. It has happened.
What?
What? Yep. Here we go. I saw this come through during the week. This was the big news I was hinting at. So first time clicking on this for myself. You're gonna love this, man. It's so good. So we've gotten we've gotten a PayPal here, and it is from John NJOROGE, and he's an African looking fella. I don't know, how would you try and pronounce that?
I don't know.
Njoroge? We'll call him John N.
John N.
John N comes in and he says, value for value support with a little money here. And he's also given us a an email. And I won't read out the email, but it's kind of making me think that this might be I don't know. I'll explain my theory after this. He sent in $0.01.
Nice.
US dollars, I believe.
Oh, okay.
There appears to be a fee that is associated with that of 0.01. And so we've gotten a total of $0.00 from John. Legend. Thank you.
Our first payment $0.
I'm John, you're going to get the asterisks of our first PayPal because technically that's zero. So I'm not going to be able to say like John was our first PayPal supporter. You'll get the asterisk for it.
You'll be the tech. This is like we're talking about longevity. You know, you're technically right. You are the first, but collectively it's wrong.
Yes, in the whole.
It didn't actually change anything.
In the whole,
so.
no, my balance is still $3.09.
That's amazing.
But yeah, I love that. It's even better because I didn't realize it was net zero because the notification on my phone said 0.01. So I was like, oh shit, he sent in 1 cent. There you go.
$0.
But yeah,
that's amazing.
That's rather funny. Thank you, John, for doing that.
Thanks for trying, mate.
Do appreciate that. And honestly, this could be one of those things. In podcasting 2.0, there's a running joke. They set up a online, like a Bitcoin address called Tallycoin, where because apparently people were like, we're going to send you Bitcoin, but I don't want to do it via Lightning. I'm going to do it on chain. And almost no one does it on chain, but Adam calls it out each week and he's like, I'll check the Tallycoin just in case. Yep, no, nothing there. And look, a couple of people have actually donated via it, so but it's still like the running joke is no one's going to do it.
Yeah.
So,
but the more you do that, it like starts bringing people to be like, do it.
Well, yeah, but the PayPal could be our version of that running joke where it's just like it's funny that every week there's nothing there. But yeah, thank you very much for everyone who has helped support as we read out there. If you want to join in on this and you're kind of like, I don't understand what a Boostagram is, go to mereimmortalspodcast.com/support. I've got some easy guides to you there on how to do it, why to do it. And there's even a link there. I still think you can claim 2,000 sats and play around with Bitcoin on the Lightning Network. So yeah, do it, people.
Do it.
Very much appreciated.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's get back into it.
All right. Well, what are we taking out from here? I think we've just talked about the Fanatics group and some of the drawbacks behind them.
So I've got some extra thoughts. And yeah, it's kind of like, I feel the focus is wrong of these people. I don't think in the totality they're wrong, but it's also right in some ways. So I'll give them, I respect them for trying to change an ingrained perception. And that ingrained perception is aging is a natural thing, and because it's natural, it's good, and we shouldn't do anything against it. So like, why fight against aging? And this is kind of like the hubris. It's like every human who was ever born, most have died. A lot of them have died. Not every human who's ever born, obviously. But you know, there's no like a solid fact of, oh yeah, this guy actually lived to 300. And we all just screwed up because we didn't do the right mantras, or we didn't do the right ways of thinking, or we didn't eat the right things. The Bible, there's people in there who apparently lived to this, but
Abraham or whatever.
What would you say? The evidence of that is
dubious.
Yes, I would call that dubious. But I do think, you know, bad things like aging should be analyzed as something to solve, like polio. Just because polio was a natural disease, it doesn't mean like it was a really good thing we stopped that. It's a really good thing that we came up with polio vaccines and polio is no longer a thing, or chickenpox, or any of those things that were just horrific. But nowadays we'll laugh it off like, yeah, haha, oh, that kid got chickenpox, you know. Well, good thing she was, you know,
vaccinated,
got the dose of it beforehand. So that I respect them for, and I think that's a worthy aim, and focusing on longevity in that sense as a kind of combat of, yes, aging is a disease. I think that's okay. But just the focus, it's kind of like, much like fame or money, longevity, I feel, should probably be like a second order effect. You know, if you chase fame, if you chase money, you're just going to have a bad time in the end of it. I think if you chase longevity, you're probably going to have a bad time of it. You talked about there's a metric called health adjusted life expectancy, HALE. I feel that's a better metric to try and get at. And that's basically like, if you were born without a, certain sort of disease or something, living a healthy life, you can expect to live a healthy life up into 60 years. You'll get 60 years of age of, really good, high quality life. And then it starts to deteriorate from there. I think a metric like that is probably better because the lifestyles of these guys are very unique, and
sure.
I think you can get, how would I phrase this? I think you can have a good life expectancy if you are kind of like them and you love the discipline of, I'm going to get to bed at this exact time. I'm going to do this exact thing. I'm not going to fall into these vices. I'm going to, XX tick this box. I'm going to have Dave Asprey 150 pills a day. On the video, he's like, I forgot to do it beforehand. How many pills do you take at a time? Oh, I take 15 or 20. And then he has a handful of pills. And they're not like, tiny little tablets. They're these fucking thick, good sized ones. And he chucks it in his mouth, like, oh, drinks down water. And he's like, I got almost one of them. One stuck to the roof of my mouth. Lol. Not, most people can't do that. Most people can't do 150
a day.
Holy shit, Juan. Sorry. I've just gotten a message here. PayPal, you've received 10 Australian dollars from Nathaniel Dennis John Simpson. And I think this might be legit.
I do know who Nathaniel J. Simpson is.
Holy shit!
There you go. That's the first proper payment.
Thank you, Nathaniel. Legend.
Actually,
is this Nathaniel who's supported before?
It is.
Nathaniel. Legend. You've done it. I'm glad it's
if it is exactly the same Nathaniel, which I'm assuming you're listening to right now, to be able to do that.
I'm pretty sure.
Congratulations on the new job. I did see that you've got a new job over with one of the banks.
Excellent.
As an agile coach. So congratulations.
He's got money to spare.
There you go. Yeah.
Bank money. Thank you, Nathaniel. Much appreciated, mate.
Yeah.
Really, I really...
Look at him. He's excited. We didn't think this was going to happen, and he's gotten it. He's actually gone through.
I really do appreciate that.
Unbelievable. That's it. He's made his year. Well done.
Should check the actual...
Oh my God, he's actually going to go check it wasn't like a fake scam.
Well, I just want to check like the comments in case he's been commenting and I've been missing it.
Wow, maybe.
I don't even know
whether he's... But yes, sorry, as you're talking through...
sorry, he did... Well, he's in the chat. Just donated $10 on PayPal to ruin the running joke. PayPal has some runs on the board now. No, you told them my secret middle names. Sorry, mate. Didn't mean to do that.
Secret.
Oh, well.
Shouldn't have said... Oh, well. That's what we have in our reading.
Thank you, Nathaniel. Much appreciated.
Wow. Now... Just on the... Yes, I agree with you on that regard because there's certain things that they do from a longevity perspective that you can do. Everybody can do. But the reality is, mere mortals, you're not going to do that. You're not going to be doing all these extra things. And if you're that level of dedication and discipline for it, then... And one of the notes I put down was, if you do care about longevity, for most mere mortals, it's the big things that are going to give you the 80% benefit. Everything else is just like the extra little inch. Are you going to track that, that particular thing gave me 3 more weeks of living? Yeah. Who cares? You're not going to know. And there's a whole host of other things in front of it that make sense to put the energy rather than caring about like, oh, well, I'm making sure that I do this. Now, it is the regular habits that you practice that are in the right association that do help you from a longevity perspective. But don't get fooled into hey, because these people are having 150 pills, that's all I've got to do to stay alive. No, that's not how it works. And, one of the things I often, when I'm listening to some of these things is, first and foremost, just don't be an idiot. Don't die by an accident. Don't do a lot of things which are going to be so ridiculously obvious for you to die that probabilistically, it's like you're probably going to die first because of that rather than anything else.
Yeah. And they do somewhat talk about this. Bryan Johnson mentioned he likes to fly planes, but he was looking at the stats and it was like, you've got like a 70% more mortality chance if you fly alone because, if you have a heart attack or something up there, the plane's going to crash, people. And so, doing obviously there he's like, well, I'm not going to ever fly alone. And he's got the money so that he doesn't ever have to do that. I mean, if you're flying a plane, you've already got some money. And so once again, it's like, I think they would talk about it, but it's not their focus to talk about.
And I think that comes to the crux of my problem, where in general, putting out information to the world on, hey, Observatrol, hey, NAD or whatever it is, and there's another one that's similar to it, all this sorts. It's like, again, it's like, say yes and, right? But I was going to be like, yes, but, are people sleeping? Just sleeping enough? Are you not doing something stupid that you're putting yourself in probability to die? Are you just broadly eating? Are you eating like absolute trash, or just not eating some preserved food all the time? Okay, there's more general, more simple things to follow than the, hey, well, if I just take this particular supplement, it's going to be fine. No, it isn't. It's a supplement for a reason. It supplements the big things that you do. And so, and I think they do say it because in Dave Asprey's book, I know that I've read ages ago, I can't remember the name of it, it did call that all out. And it's, the big things, which is cardiovascular disease and Alzheimer's and, diabetes. Okay, these are the killers. You got to do something about that. So they do tend to say that anyways in their book. So I will vouch for them that maybe in these broad amount of books, they do talk about that. I know Peter Attia in Outlive talks about that as well.
Yeah.
But I think the takeaway that most people, especially the fanatics, go is, oh, it's the cool little thing that everyone must be doing this, which is like, hey, the thing is you should, if you really want to focus on it, that's the main key focus. That's the main meaty stuff. Just because everything else, like red light therapy, blue light therapy, yellow light therapy, okay, they have some benefit and some percentages, but is it really determinable by mere mortals? Not really.
Yeah, I think it's just part of it's down to, the longevity, schmongevity. When I was coming up with the title of the episode, it's that constant kind of like selling, or you need to find the next new thing. Like the next study is going to break it. It's going to break it wide open. This is like grapes. Grapes are the thing. And it's really hard to, I don't know, maybe make a career out of do these 5 things. Get your sleep in order. Get your, don't overeat. Minimize sugar. Exercise relatively frequently. The big ones. I think it's just really hard to make a name for yourself, or like, oh, this is the longevity dude, if you're just telling people to do the 5, basics, 10 things.
People just go, oh, that's the basics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I want to live even longer. I want, to, what were they saying? Putting testosterone cream on my balls, and what they actually said that in the podcast. Nice. And to, what's the difference of putting it on your balls versus putting on your, taking it via injection or something. And, yeah, it's just...
This is not mere mortal conversation for sure. This is not like a normal conversation you'd be having around the water cooler.
It's just excessive. And I get it. I get from the monetary aspect of you probably... And if there is a guy out there, we're probably doing an injustice to him, because he's probably like, I'm the longevity dude, but we've never heard of him because he's just saying...
Drowned by all these other people.
Exactly. And so like I feel kind of bad for that of, here we are somewhat, promoting some people who it's like, these are the longevity guys, whereas, there's actually, and there's spectrums of this as well. I've got this kind of in my summary of the spectrums. Did you want to talk about the longevity of like the AI sort of longevity?
Yeah, let's touch on it. So and life extension, and I think that's where it's going to become, I reckon this is going to become more and more a thing. This is going to be definitely more in the conversation and in the general parlance of, life extension, longevity means these. When we're engineers, and I specifically was structural engineer in my past. Now, in structural engineering, when you're doing...
civil.
No, civil structural. Well, civil, but majored in structural.
Oh, there you go.
So with structures in general, bridges, buildings, dams, you don't design these fucking things. You don't build them for forever. For forever. You don't do that. What do you do? Same with mines.
1 in 1,000 year flood.
Exactly. Sort of, but you put years to it. You actually build something so like, okay, that building will withstand for 125 years. Mathematically, by the numbers, cool. After that...
Yeah, who knows? If you get more out of it, it's good.
Awesome. If not, probably say go replace it. There's a keyword, replace it. Because in general, when something like a bridge. You maintain it. You just maintain it. There's a usual yearly thing that you maintain it with. You replace the things. You keep it clean. You
Check for
remove
rust. Yeah.
Right. But after a certain amount of time, right? Story Bridge here in Brisbane, there's a section of that particular bridge. It's a very old bridge. That gets replaced. That has whole sections that get replaced. There's piping, the steel. Why? Because when that was built, that particular bridge was for horse and carriage going across it.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's fucking cars.
Yeah, right.
Trucks. It doesn't withstand it very well. So it has to get replaced. It has to be fixed up. To continue living, if you want to call it as a thing, right? Now, extend its life.
Yeah.
I think that we're going to get to a point in time where people are going to start going, well, because in general, 75 years old, and around 75 years old, what happens to males and females? Folks from longevity specialists,
75?
what do you think happens? At 75,
Hip problems? I don't know.
muscle. At 75
yeah.
years old, roughly, your muscle, your volume and your strength of muscle basically just falls off a cliff. That's it.
Okay.
Gone.
Chironization is what that's called.
Chironization. Weak. So in my mind, I go, well, shit, I just want to be as strong as possible because that cliff, if I get there, is going to happen. No matter what you do, it's going to happen. How are you going to stop that? Well, and that's when you start going, okay, well, you have to rebel against the existing muscle, the existing tendons, the existing genes and everything like that. The only way I can start seeing people doing this, which I would imagine them to go down, is replacement. So this is not like fiction anymore. It might have been like 20 years ago. You can 3D print things, internal organs and the like. I could see them printing out like, cool, okay, I need a new right arm, I need a new left arm. Where it starts getting weird, I think, is when they go, so your valves and your arteries and all that, they as well, you got blood pumping through them. There's degradation of them as well. That happens as you get older, right? Mm-hmm. At some point, you'd have to almost replace your entire body, realistically, to be able to continue living to a particular age, unless you're some freakazoid with your genes that allows it to continue to exist. But even then, can you modify that? Maybe not. Yeah. Now, because it's just blood flowing through a particular tube and it just degrades. At that point, if you start completely changing a human like that, there could be a call of, okay, well, part cyborg, is that now longevity, or is that, do you have to call that something completely different, which is, as Bryan says, you're evolving now. Are you becoming this superior being into another thing that's not a human anymore? It's this amalgamation of previous existing goop into machine. I don't know.
Yeah, there's it's an age-old question. It's the ship of Theseus. Have you heard of this before?
The ship of Theseus.
Yeah.
No.
So it's the name of the paradox derived from Plutarch originally. And basically it was like philosophers used to debate this, whereas you've got this ship, Theseus' ship, needs replacing. Oh, okay, we'll replace that plank of wood. Oh, we'll replace that plank of wood. If you replace every plank of wood, is so that none are the original from the original ship of Theseus, is that still the ship of Theseus? Or is that now an entirely new thing? And there's whole books written on that sort of stuff. We won't try and solve that here, but I do think that if you want to start making some claims of longevity, even immortality, once again, I think you're silly in the sense okay, you're going to outlive the heat death of the universe sort of thing.
That's exactly what I was
but or getting sucked through a black hole. But if you wanted to say really, really, really long time, millennia, millions of years, doing that through some sort of robot, uploading consciousness into a computer, that sort of thing. Are you still you? I think you could make a case for that. I'm still me now, even though probably most of the atoms in my body of when I was me as a baby are not the same atoms. Yep. So I think you could make an argument for that, sure enough. But on the longevity aspect, if they talk about AI, they rarely talk about it in that sort of
context.
Relation. It's they're usually more focused on the real atoms, physical sort of my body sort of thing, rather than the brain, which is a shame because they sometimes talk about the brain. They'll sometimes be oh, there's no point having a real healthy body if your mind's shot. My mom's a pretty good example of this. She's fucking strong, man. When she's angry and she grabs my wrist, it hurts. I'm like, Mum, stop that. Like, it actually hurts me. But her mind's gone. Like there's very little of who she used to be, where she is now. And so they kind of get it. They sometimes talk about it, but probably if I had
and
to...
they go off the loose end.
Then they go off the loose end and talk more about the body. Whereas I think you should... If I was going to like get into longevity, I would be looking at brain related stuff personally. Yeah. I wouldn't spend much time on the extending my body lifespan. I'd be looking more at like, okay, how can I keep my brain healthy?
Well, let's talk about it this way. So I'll give you maybe the shortened view of, I guess, how I see it, or maybe how me and Mortal should see it. And this just comes from like again, 12 books are probably, not 12 books, but probably a range of of them. Endless amount of podcasts on this particular topic, a lot of things around it. And I would say as well that there are aspects of me being, as I said, to the bias that I want to maximize some things now in any case, and that's not going to be achieving ultimate, optimal longevity, and that's just fine, right? But big key things I'm going to say from a body perspective, if I just general, sleep, obviously, freaking sleep. I'm just going to put that in body. Look, sleep, just sleep better. It's a fantastic thing. But a couple of pillars on a more, if I'm thinking fitness perspective. 4 things, simple. Cardio.
Handstand push-ups.
One arm. If you can do one arm, you lift 200. Cardio, so your cardiovascular endurance.
Okay.
Your VO2 max.
Mine's not good.
Your strength. And your balance.
Okay.
That's basically the key 4 things. Peter Attia inspired.
I've got 2 of them.
From Peter Attia. So, strength. You're talking bone density. Like, underneath all that has a lot of things. Bone density, muscle mass, muscle volume, muscle thickness, strains of the muscle. Yeah. But stability is just a big thing, which is yoga, a lot of other
being
things.
Being able to move your body, like able to use that strength, I guess.
Yeah. Why a lot of these things, cardio, VO2, strength and stability, like easily why? Because there's all falls off a cliff as you get older. If you are lucky enough to get older, this all falls off a cliff. It's the reality of life. You cannot do anything about this.
I thought you were going to say like you fall off a cliff if you don't have these things.
No.
Which you probably do.
But all of these things will taper down at some point in your years. You can't do anything about it. It's a get it as best as possible. And Peter Attia has a wonderful stuff about this. It's get it to the best place you can so that when the inevitable comes, you're at a better off point than you would have been beforehand. That's it. That's really it. From at least my perspective, mind, it's the conversations around, well, just broadly, you want to take care of your sharpness, your memory, the newness and the adventure. And what I might mean by this is there are little fun, quirky things that you can do in everyday life, which I think from a mind perspective can keep you sharper. And it's, if I was to boil it down, when I've read mostly about longevity around the mind, it's doing new novel things that the mind doesn't really incorporate or done before. So sometimes it's as little as, hey, if you brush your teeth with your right hand, sometimes brush it with your left hand. But it's also adventure, it's also reading, it's also just keeping your mind in a state of active participation and usage, not sitting there, drooling over a Netflix episode for 5 hours every single night. Yeah, there's shown changes to the brain patterns around that and just absolutely shutting your brain off versus actively engaging with it and participating with it. And then actually, so the Harvard study about happiness and whatnot is finished, and there's a big piece about social connections being a big proponent, well, the biggest proponent to that. But I would also say it's from a longevity perspective,
like loneliness is a killer sort of thing.
Exactly,
right?
But it's also and just be broad, fucking the purpose of it, right? If you say I want to live to 180, for what? For what, Dave? What do you want to live to 180 for? Do you want to live to 180 because you want to see the tech?
He really enjoys putting testosterone cream on his balls.
You want to put testosterone on your balls for 180 years? Fuck it. Okay, it sounds dumb. Right? But if you have to be honest, it's like, okay, why? What's the anchoring reason that you want to live long? I think the answer that comes around the social connections, if it's more attributed to that, it also, a big part, which I think a lot of the longevity conversations miss, is there's going to be a reason to live. If you have this clinical person like Bryan Johnson living his life, like, hey, I'm doing all these things and whatnot, but one day he comes home and he's like, you know what? I've got no friends, I've got no family, and what the fuck am I doing this for? Kills himself. Well, man, that was useless.
Yeah.
So a part of that is also, from a soul perspective, is if you have reasons to live, and this can apply across broader things, it also, in that way, pushes you to live longer. And honestly, I would believe that in terms of if I said to myself, hey, obviously maybe not now, a little bit later. If I was like, hey, I'm 95 years old and I want to make to 100 because my daughter's going to be this age and I want to live, you'll probably push yourself to do that. There's I think parts of that mentality that then it spreads on what you're doing and your aspects of living to optimize for that, just generally, both consciously and subconsciously. But yeah, if you have no anchoring reason apart from, as you said, it's your first order, I just want to live longer, I kind of question like, man, that's one way to really quickly get deviated when the tough. Well, it's easy when it's easy.
Yeah.
But when the tough times come calling, and you got to answer the why, man, you're gonna have a hard time actually answering and doing the right thing.
Yeah. What is it? The man who has a why can bear almost any how. The niche quote.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a pretty good one. All right. So my little summary here was just be careful out there, people. If you're getting into like the longevity sort of thing, I think there's a spectrum of decentness of, who would I personally recommend? The Peter Attia's, the Tim Ferriss's, in that Peter Attia book, The Longevity, on the Reddit post, the guy didn't really have any key recommendations because there really was none of those like one stop thing will cure you sort of thing. I'm guessing that book is more, those pillars.
I still haven't read it, but I'm pretty sure I gifted it to my dad, so I'm gonna read it
cool.
afterwards.
Yeah, I'd be really keen to know. I feel like people like Bryan Johnson, Dave Asprey, they're kind of on the other side of that, of the people I would take less seriously. And then there's a lot of people in the middle of that. This is more like the David Sinclairs, Aubrey de Grey's, where I listen to a couple of their kind of podcasts or them talking, and they're very focused on the data or the science or like one particular aspect of the longevity, but not kind of the wackier stuff.
There's a mixture you can get.
Yeah. And I just don't understand how it works. Like, is it a 0.5% accumulation per pill or per trick? Like, where are they getting these numbers of 180 years from? I don't know how do they multiply, go exponential? Is there a fountain of youth? I do have some predictions though that I'd be willing to make.
Okay.
I'd be willing to bet that if you took the top 20 longevity people and said like, these are the top 20 as of right now, I bet that their average life like if we tally it all up, 50 years time goes by, let's just say that most of them are in their 30s, 40s, 70 years time. Fuck, I reckon the average age they will live to is probably like 90. I would be surprised if it goes above that. I'd be willing to put some serious money down. Okay. Long-term bet, obviously.
Yeah, that's a long-term bet, okay?
But that's something I'd be willing to bet that these people don't really break like into the hundreds or anything. I think they'll just be normal humans for the most part. The biggest gains will come from more control over the brain. So I would actually say like probably the biggest gains in longevity related to the body. So not talking about like uploading into a AI or even implementation of bionic stuff into our bodies. I think it'd be more like a Neuralink thing where we can just access certain aspects and be like, I want to quit smoking, and it just does it. It just like rewires the brain and stops you from doing the stupid shit. So you still would have to have you would still have to have the knowledge of like smoke, because there's people out there who I'm sure smoke and they're like, oh no, it's actually good for me. And the medical association, like blah, 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 they don't know this shit. So all that sort of stuff, I think will stay, but I think there's some gains to be made of hacking in like
in the mind.
I want to do this thing, and the Neuralink thing helps you do it instantly, and that would gain. A couple of more. I'll let you answer that in a sec. We will see the top lifespan grow, so I think people will reach into like the 130s, maybe 100, even 140. But I think that'll be mostly just due to there being more humans, not necessarily like breakthroughs. So I think we'll just have more outliers. I think the pseudoscience kind of bullshit will persist. AI will not combat misinformation. So there is still going to be all of these guys out there. They're not all, I think this was a nuanced interview, so we're not totally trashing them, but there's certain aspects where they get onto a particular thing where it's like, yeah, okay. But AI might be able to analyze your data and kind of combat that relying too much on the cumulative human data. Oh, the optimal diet is, well, the optimal diet is going to be optimal for me and not, the optimal diet for men in Caucasians in their 30s, born in Australia with, English heritage, which I imagine is mine. I haven't done the ancestry. Who knows? I could be Scandinavian. So I think there will be gains to be had in longevity. It's just not going to come from the stuff they're talking about.
Yeah.
The pills, the testosterone in the balls, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, if I was to go out on a limb and say, from what I've heard, genuinely, apart from the call you to go to sleep and all that sort of stuff, I agree with you with the mind things. What's the other thing that I'd say, hey, if you really care about this, about longevity, and you want to extend it, I would say, okay, focus on you as a human.
Your deadlift.
Right?
300 kilos.
300 kilos.
Minimum.
As a system. Just imagine as a system, right? As a human. We talked about bridges and all this sort of stuff. Slowing the process down of being a human in an active way. Mm-hmm. In whichever way or format that looks like. Now, that you could go in a whole different variety, but what I mean by that is, it's simple. You as a human degrade, right? Entropy happens because you're expending energy, you're utilizing energy, and you're expending energy. And through the usage of expending energy, you are breaking down your body. Yep. That's it. In all its formats, right?
Yep.
Because you're using. It's, okay, you wanna try and extend your life? In the pure form of extension of longevity.
Be more sedentary.
And it might not be sedentary because it's trying to get to a space where you are utilizing the least amount of energy.
The minimal
to live.
Minimal.
And it doesn't necessarily mean be as sedentary as possible because you can get into these variations of but if you're sedentary, does your heart rate go up higher? Versus doing a little bit of training where it actually brings your heart rate average down, and then your heart's beating less, pumping less blood, less energy that's needed. So there's you'd have to find some little, nice point golden cross where it's like, okay, that's the right thing. But if you want to do that, what you want to do is try to eat. You basically try to exist in a world where you're not eating too much because you're not ingesting too much calories. And you're also just not exerting that much.
I've heard being in a colder environment actually increases your lifespan because you're just not you're not sweating as much. You're not burning. No?
Honestly,
I have kind of heard that. I don't. Yeah. Once again,
you could probably make claims for both because what if it's too cold and then so your body has to actively utilize energy for it. But this is what I mean. You could take that in so many ways. But if I had to go on a limb, I'd say, and if you're holding me more to say Juan, tell me something about that's different. I'd say. Yeah. You'd have to just reduce your energy expenditure as a human. And that should, apart from dying from another genetic thing, that's going to be the best way to keep your body operating for longer because it's just being useless.
If you're an engineer or a handyman mechanic, when I worked in the mines, there was a whole branch of people, maintenance, the maintenance crew, of just making sure the machines were running. And basically the goal of them is just to maximize uptime per year because uptime equals more coal getting dug or more dirt getting dug equals more money. Plain and simple. And there's probably some metrics where it's they were not optimizing for maximum uptime over 100-year period like a human would. They're probably aiming for more 30 years, maybe, if that. But they would do all these things where it's you can't have the machine just sitting too long. So they'd sometimes park up machines, but they would have people go out there and just turn it on, get the juices running once a week, maybe something like that. And then, they also wouldn't thrash it. And if they were thrashing it, it would break. And so there would always be these SPMs, special plan maintenance or whatever, where it would be production crew are wanting to thrash it, fuck it, let's go, let's get the coal out, let's dig. But then it would have to be no, okay, we've learned as a business this isn't the optimal way to do this. So let's give the machines a break every now and then. So it's in that in between zone where it's probably worth thinking of the human body as okay, it's an engine. So
I like it. I like that definition. Little tidbit, this side, but just an interesting thing. Generally for machinery, if you want to know, if this is just broadly for everything, as you said, the cost is in the uptime. That's why generally when you buy machines, right, for construction or anything like that, it's relatively cheap what costs you a lot of money is the maintenance. That's where they make. That's actually where most companies make their money.
Yeah,
from,
okay.
is maintenance,
Oh,
which makes sense because once you give them the product, you have to maintain it.
Yeah.
So and you want to do it quick because you need to get it back in there to make money. That's where all the money's made from.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's probably the same with software.
it's actually
right?
from the parts. It's actually from the parts that they make all their money. And I know because I directly did that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
There you go.
there you go.
Nice.
I think that's
Alright,
it.
Brilliant.
Longevity.
Thank you.
Anthony,
that was a fun one.
No,
I
Anthony.
enjoyed that.
Nathan, Nathaniel, thank you very much.
Nathaniel, thank you so much, mate. He's
in. It's been the seal has been broken.
Yeah, he's seared into
hymen's
my
broken.
brain. Yeah, he's seared
done.
into my brain. He's joined the legendary Chad Farrow. There, we now have the legendary
Nathaniel.
Simpson.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much. We're not going to go any longer. Not extending this podcast, but yes, if you do want to support us, please do so through all the different means. Obviously, PayPal, but you can do it sending a Boostagram. That's sending through a message with some sats attached to all good podcasting, new podcast platforms out there. Go and play around with them. Kyrin's done a video on all the various ones that you can go check out from our supporters page as well. Go and check it out.
I'd also just recommend creating a clip. That quite helps. So if there's any aspect, not only does it help in like kind of spreading the word a little bit, but it lets us know what aspects of
interesting.
The podcast you enjoy. So creating it on Fountain's probably the best case, but because I'll be able to see it then.
But there's other places you can play around with it.
Yeah,
as well.
and just like reaching out and letting us know if you do something, like if you do something to help us, and it's like, oh, those callous bastards, they didn't.
Probably tell us.
You
Probably tell us. Let us know you've done something.
You need to let us know.
Yeah.
So we do try and set notifications up. Like I do have the PayPal one on my phone, so thankfully I got to see it real time with Nathaniel. But yeah, we miss things. So
exactly, let us know. It does help.
If we're coming across like callous bastards, it's probably just because we're ignorant.
It's probably not intended,
rather than malicious.
Exactly. All right, Immortalized, thank you very much for joining. Once again, we are live 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on the Wednesday for musings.
Yes.
But for now, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining in. That's it. Immortalized, one out.
Kyrin out.
Good.
Bye.
Live long.
Not forever.